Hello everyone, yes, I'm Emma, I'm from Willoughby. I've been at Willoughby for 14 years as an environmental educator. And our main aim, our main focus is to get people out into the bush, out into the environment, doing things, actively getting excited about things. I'm not much of a PowerPoint person, so excuse the presentation. I wish we were out in the bush having a direct contact with nature, but instead we're inside. Never mind. We might like to make things fun. Every year we do bush pantomimes for kindy kids. So that's me dressed as a magician, trying to keep the fox away from eating our wild native animals. We make it fun. We make it memorable. Yeah. So about 5 years ago, we started to have a slowing of schools ringing us up and saying, can you do a bushwalk for my class, for our year, for our entire high school grade? It was slowing down. We were still going out to schools and actively selling our programs and saying, come on a bushwalk, do this program, we're linking with your curriculum, we can help you. Still, teachers are overwhelmed, like people like ourselves, contacting them saying, here's a new program, come and do this. They're super busy. You go into especially a primary school classroom, and they've got kids going in and out, going off to music classes, this and that, religion, it's all happening. They are busy people, primary school teachers in particular. So I decided it would be great if we could use our resources at council. So at our council, we were really lucky. We have a wildlife officer who's also an ex-graphic designer. We also have a graphic designs team, as most councils do. We have a beautiful new library. We have beautiful librarians. I love the library. And we thought, how can we use all our resources, all our staff, well, not all our staff, it usually ends up being the person that creates these things, that does the work. But anyway, how can we utilise all of this and make a project that is going to engage our schools, not just for this year, but for the future? So it was born, the Wildlife Storybook Competition. The idea initially was that each primary school was given an animal, so a bandicoot, if a bandicoot would frequent their grounds, a lorikeet if they were more of an inner city school. Different wildlife that actually visited their schools that kids could look at and go, oh yeah, I see that lorikeet licking the flowers, having a real connection with that animal. So anyway, so they were then to have a presentation or a bushwalk by us about the animal, go away and write stories, and the best story from that school would have their work published. This is a couple of examples from the first year. Sorry. Beautiful books. One was a fairy wren. So, the girl that did the artwork in this, just gorgeous, beautiful stories. The work that we got from kids was exquisite. And also, some of the stories that they wrote were bang on what we were banging on about. So this one was about Bella, the lucky long-nosed bandicoot. So when we visited her school, we were talking about how the main killers of bandicoots in this area were that cars were running over them. So, mums and dads hooning around the corners, running over bandicoots. And she wrote a really fun little story that talked about Bella, waking up and dreaming that her tail was gone because it had been run over. She got it. The kid got it. She put it in a story that was suitable to be read to any kid from a very young age to an older kid, made it presentable. It's kids teaching kids. It's about them engaging, which they do beautifully, with other kids. So, yeah, so that's the program. So, this year, this is a really boring slide, sorry, but so this year we changed it. The theme was about catchments. So the children had to learn about what a catchment is and choose an animal by themselves that lived in our creeks or was affected by catchments and the problems that are connected with a catchment, and write a story. So this was an example of one of the posters that we used, and it had a lot of details about when the entries open, registrations, about the class presentations that would happen, what your short story needed to be about, your artwork, your layout. We had to be very careful in how we gave information to children. So we had to stand in front of them and say, okay, you need to write your story in this space, do your artwork in this space, make it very clear, give them their permission forms, hand it to them, say, you need to give us this back. Make things very, very clear for the teachers. Anyway, let's just move on. So this is also a hideously boring slide, but it talks about some of the actions that we needed to go through in organising the competition. So I'm a part-time worker and I've worked with one other staff member in the office on this, and it's taken a lot of my time so far this year. So, you know, you need to create the guidelines, work out the topic, specifically think about how they need to enter, all these details. Provide information about species, information to the schools, links to websites. We gave every school a USB stick with our presentation, with all the forms, all the guidelines, very clearly special notes to teachers that actually spelt out the exact things that they needed to do and exactly what we would help them with. Came up with a competition name, the dates, the prizes. The main prize was that they would have their story published in a collection of short story books, of short stories. These books go to all our council libraries, all the school libraries, and this year we had a bit of extra funding, so they are going out to, I think, 20 different council areas, all their libraries, all their school libraries. So it's, you know, it's quite wide. And, you know, we put things up on the website. And the bottom one says competition flyer sent out to schools. This wasn't just emailing off to the principals. This wasn't just sending stuff to the reception. We physically had to go out to each school, drop it off, wave it in the faces of the teachers we knew, the principals, say, this is amazing, this project, come on board. The results are excellent. So on the second line it says deliver competition packages to schools. So this wasn't just giving them the information on a USB, say do the presentation. It was making appointments and speaking to the classes. Sometimes it was 5 classes together. Sometimes it was just in one single classroom doing a presentation. This year we did a PowerPoint presentation. But anyway, I'll show you a bit more of that later. In other years, we've done a bit more creative presentations where we've got them outside, we've stuck a tail on them and told them that they were a fairy wren, got them moving like a fairy wren. These things were very important, actively teaching the kids. Request sent to the graphic designs team. We had to work closely with the graphic designs team, give them lots of time to get the invitations ready, to the design for the certificates, the design for the book. The layout of the book needs to be designed very carefully. So that was discussed at the beginning in detail. Oh, looking at the time. So, you know, when you're printing a book, you're not just thinking page to page, you need to think of pages, how they work in groups of 4. Librarians would know this. Anyway, so we had to keep communicating with the teachers to make sure the children were doing the work. Sometimes they did it in class, sometimes they would do it at home. The competition closes, we collect all the entries, we judge the entries, things go out to graphic design, we start setting up a big launch. We had a big launch this year at Chatswood Library. The main features being the mayor was there to hand out the certificates. The people that had their artwork in the book got to pull a ribbon and unveil their artwork. It was very dramatic. And, you know, it was a great success. We had over 150 people at the launch. Anyway, and then we set up readings at libraries. So the kids do readings for preschooler groups or other school groups. And then we also had them reading at other events, so our fauna fair, etc. Okay, so this is me in a classroom doing my thing, going through our presentation. In this time we had the kids all come out and put a different piece of rubbish. They all became characters in the catchment. So they became, I don't know, this has been around in environmental education circles for a while. You know, they all became, I can't think of one now. The truck driver that threw his can out the window, or the kid that ate a sandwich and stuffed it under the seat, but the rain washed it into the drain, and it thus ended up into our tiny model of a catchment looking filthy. Yes. This was an example of how we did the judging. So we were quite serious about the judging. We had forms. We sat down, we took a few days. We had a librarian on our judging team. We had 6 people judging the books. We also had teachers cull them for us, which was really important. This is an example of the invitation that went out for the launch. As you can see, there's a beautiful frog graphic. So that was taken from one of the stories that we had. Kids do amazing artworks, and if you're an educator, you know you're always looking for graphics. So we can now use their graphics, basically their artworks in work that we do, which is hugely valuable. Yeah. The certificates also using their artwork to include more kids into the prize winning. So why is this project of benefit? Is it worthwhile? And I would say yes, because I was there witnessing how into it the kids got and the pride on their faces when, you know, the winners were announced. And it was, you know, it just visually, without evaluating, from comments from teachers and parents saying this is a great project, it's a pretty good project. This kid, he, you know, was so, I asked him to read his story out at the launch, and he was so nervous. And he did it like a public speaker. It was amazing. Kids' own research. So this is one of the kids that, you know, their entries, he put in photos. What I loved about it was he had been out in the bush. He looked for the animal, the water dragon. He saw all our signage. He made all the connections from the gutter to the stormwater channel to the habitat for animals. He really went out, did his own research, made those connections that we were trying to get through to him. That information is not going to be lost on him. He's going to remember it forever. So learning to make positives out of negative environmental problems. Some examples of story endings. After talking to the animals, the kids cleaned up the creek so the animals could live in a much cleaner habitat. After the kids had finished cleaning up, the animals thanked them, and both the kids and animals lived happily ever after. The end. This is a classic example of what kids do. They think about the environment in cleaning. I don't really want them to think about cleaning the environment, but, you know, they're getting somewhere, okay? Jack felt so proud. He may not have found his parents' tree frog, but rescuing a trapped ricali was way better. The end. And remember, you can save penguins by being more careful with rubbish. The second kingfisher agreed, and the first kingfisher said, let's forget this contest and try and make Scott's Creek a better place to live in. We had the launch on World Environment Day, and the theme this year was raise your voice, not the sea level. So it worked perfectly. We always have on World Environment Day. And also just reminding kids that their voice is part of, this positive change. Contacts. The competition enables relationships with all kinds of people: principals, teachers, students, librarians, and parents. And sometimes the parents, it's an opportunity to really meet parents, and they're so thankful that their kid has been involved in this project that, they give you more. They want to be involved in more. And sometimes gaining the trust of teachers is difficult. But, we've had success with making great contacts from teachers from this project in particular. Follow-up activities. So habitat gardens in schools. So it's not just about getting the book out, getting it in libraries. The most important factor of this is going back to the school and congratulating all the children that entered the competition. Doing it at an assembly, however you want to do, finding extra prizes, and then getting them involved with doing a habitat planting in their school, maybe for the animals. So in one school we had the eastern water skink, and we made lounge lizards. The kids got rocks together and made, lizard lounges where, lizards could sleep. So that's to us is a really important thing, this follow-up. Other ideas, nest boxes going up in schools. Readings at libraries and other events have been really successful. So this is one of our Year 5 winners in the school holidays, talking to a preschooler, reading her story at a preschooler reading activity. Yeah, and it was a real thrill for her to do that. Also, one good thing about this book is the cute and cuddly advantage. So, linking a serious environmental issue with something cute and cuddly. So everybody received whales at the launch. We sponsor a whale, but it's also just to put a nicer gloss over the fact that, a piece of plastic that you put down accidentally goes down a drain is going to float around in our oceans for maybe 400 years. There's a huge problem with plastics and catchment issues. There really are serious problems, but we need to put positive spins on them, and we need to make it not a negative experience for children. One of the really interesting things that came out of this year, because we had one theme across all 9 schools that were involved, was the differences in the knowledge about the environment between schools. So for instance, I don't know if you know Chatswood, the schools that were right within Chatswood, we had kids that had no idea about the environment, who, I've got another slide coming up, that would say, can I do my talk on a pigeon? And I'd say, oh, native pigeon, with the spike. And it's go, oh, no, just a pigeon? Oh, okay, well, sometimes peregrine falcons eat pigeons in Chatswood, and he'd look at me like, oh, And then what they wrote about was a lot more about themselves and about their own problems. So, their animal characters would talk about how they didn't have any friends, or we even had some that talked about divorce problems, and it was very interesting. And then we had one school, which is a real bushy area, and the kids, when I spoke to them, they knew a lot about the environment. And it was really sad for me to say that a lot of their stories were quite depressing, quite dark. These are Year 5 kids. They shouldn't have any real worries in the world. So we've got to be very careful about how we give information to these kids and expect them to dissect it. Anyway, raving on. Kids love listening to other kids. They're engaged, they're drawn, especially to a bit older kids. One of the aims of this project that's spelled out in their guidelines is the story is to be a story that can be read to a younger buddy. So the classes link up with another buddy class. And you know, these are Year 5 kids, these kindy kids or Year 2 kids, they just want to listen to these Year 5 kids. They are really engrossed. And so we've found that this has been really positive PR for our section and our council. This is, you know, sometimes we go to a lot of effort to get our activities in the paper. I don't know, maybe some of you also do that. Really trying to get the local rag to come along to our events. In this case, we had all the kids from our time at school become a whale when we sponsored this whale. We had a cherry picker, and you know, it's a big PR event really. It's an educational activity, but you know, they kind of go hand in hand. But you know, without any kind of newspaper coverage, the extent that people have heard about this competition now, you know, goes across all the schools in our area, and lots of kids, lots of parents, lots of teachers know about it and know it's a good thing. So a snapshot of the environmental knowledge and feelings from different suburbs. So we discovered that, you know, in some of in the centre of Chatswood and Artarmon, where there's a lot of kids from foreign backgrounds, their environmental knowledge or experience with nature is pretty small. And some of the comments we've had in our walks is this nature when we've been in the bush? Yes, it's nature. Or this is the first time I've walked in a garden. Yeah, very surprising, but true. That last comment, that was by an older teenager that said that. Yeah. Curriculum links. Lots of the teachers were talking about how the program really linked in with their literacy topics. We do a lot of links with human society and its environment and growing and changing subjects. But one of the librarians that was working with us on this project was suggesting that, you know, possibly we provide a complete lesson plan to go with this competition. So we work out with the teachers what they're trying to teach in that year, at this time of year, and make it into a lesson plan, the competition. So yeah, lots of things you can do. Oh, running out of time. Evaluation or lack of it. Yeah, we've sent out some forms, but it needs a lot more evaluation, this project. And it also needs, to work out exactly what the children have learnt from the experience and how their behaviour has changed. I need to work that into evaluation. Issues. Timing is a real issue. There's a NAP plan at the beginning of the year. As I said before, you know, schools are busy. They've got a really packed amount, they're really packed with the amount of stuff they want to do. And some schools and teachers, they need all of this the year before. And I was just also going to say, it's quite a workload, this competition, but I think it's worth it. Lots of emails, lots of communication that you don't bank on. And conclusion, you know, I'm just all about let's facilitate children to find their own connection with nature and reading. So as librarians and educators, let's not shove things in, you know, their faces or expect them to write an amazing story, but just try and facilitate that they somehow get into nature or read about nature or the environment and find their own connection with it. It might be in a really different way than we expect.